Sadguru Maharaj ki jai. With the immense blessings of our beloved Guru Maharaj, Maharanyam Shri Shri Muralidhara Swamiji. Today we will take a very special chapter, something very close to our beloved Guru Maharaj's heart. It is there in the 11th canto. 11th canto of Bhagavatam is an interesting and an intriguing and an immensely useful guidebook, not only for our religious life per se, though I don't like to divorce religion from day-to-day living. I'm sure you get what I'm saying. A religious life in the sense that the life in the puja room type of a thing, or life when I am in the satsang type of a thing. It gives some tremendous insights into how do I be a better person? How do I succeed well in my life? How do I not get manipulated or distracted by what's happening outside, either online or in bone and flesh with other people, etc. And it gives me a tremendous perspective of how I be me, so that I can actually succeed in my life. Okay. In that, I will take a small little sample. I am going to discuss 11th canto, chapter 23. And so, what is the grandest goal of life? The grandest goal of life, in its most spiritual sense, is expressed in the following sloka, 46th sloka. Dhanam swadharmo niyamo yamascha shrutam cha karmani cha sadvratani sarve mano nigraha lakshanantaha parodhiyogo manasas samadhihi. An incredible samam bonum of practical aspects of Bhagavata Gita. You all know that our GOD, our Swamiji, has given a lovely dictum, a lovely motto for our GOD. No name, no fame, no personal interest, or no hidden agenda, only God. Now, that is a fantastic way of looking at spirituality, because if we lose sight of why I am doing stuff in the first place, what happens is I get sidetracked and I become miserable eventually. Why do I do stuff like dhanam? Why do I do charity? Why do I stick to my principles or dharma or values? Swadharma. Why do I follow a routine? Why do I follow some good practices like japam, including what we all are doing? Some of us just join, but I'm sure they have the practice of reading at least one chapter a day of Bhagavatam, or 10 chapters, whatever. It's called yama and niyama. Niyama means our lifestyle, yama and niyama. Lifestyle and some good practices like japam, parayanam, etc. Why do we do all that? Why do we give something in charity? Why should we follow a life of values, dharma? Why should we follow something which has been prescribed to us by the rishis? Why should we follow a good lifestyle, a balanced lifestyle? And Dvija finally says, why should we do all that? Dhanam, Swadharma, Niyama, Yama, Shrutam. Shrutam means reading, including Bhagavatam. It's also Shrutam. Shrutam means, actually doing self-study or being educated in our scriptures. And Shrutam can, in a way, include also all our other learning, engineering or arts or, stuff like that, political science, law. Cha karmani, cha sadvratani. Today is Ekadasi. Some of you may follow Ekadasi vratam of not taking rice and trying to chant as much possible. All there is sadvrata. Karmani, doing various duties. There is a duty as a student, there is a duty as a son or a daughter, there is a duty as a citizen, there is a duty as a human being. All that is karma. Sarve. Why do we do all that? It all converges into a grand goal. And if you lose sight of the goal, all this will create only misery for us. What is the grandest goal? Believe it or not, Sarve. Mano Nigraha Lakshanantaha. All these are there for us to channelize our mental energy so that the mind becomes totally composed. It is all for the grandest way, silencing of the mind to be in the state of what is called as maximum potential, maximum joy, etc. So, sarve mononigraha lakshanantaha, charity, following our duties, swadharma, and having a balanced lifestyle, and doing some routine practices like waking up at a so and so time, and taking food after some ablutions, stuff like that, and reading something which is not just for earning the bread, you see, and doing various karma activities, and also to observe some fasts, vratam. All that is directed towards one grand goal, sarve mano nigraha lakshananta. Mind is restless, and the restlessness of the mind can take various forms in form of anxiety, stress, worry, and stuff like that, and fear. All that is the mind's restlessness. So what we are trying to do with our life is somehow make this mind a little silent, and that silence of the mind is what we call as the highest happiness. And you all must have experienced this. I've already asked you, maybe in many of the small workshops you've done. When you are truly, truly happy, believe it or not, you are in the state where the mind is absolutely silent. Have you realized it? How do you realize it is? When you are truly happy because you achieved something, or somebody complimented you, or you did a very, you put a lot of efforts on some endeavor and it came to a fruition, and there were accolades for that, etc. The reason may be many, or you went on a lovely hiking trip and you saw some wonderful hills punctuated by dark clouds with birds flying in formation. You look at it and you feel very happy. And you will remember it. And that those were the moments I really cherished because I was happy. Now, believe it or not, you need to trust me on this. If you can't really look into yourself, when I asked you the question, when you were truly happy, what were you thinking? The answer is silence. Because you were not actually thinking anything. The mind was absolutely silent, resulting in an experience called happiness. Achievement led to a brief silence of the mind. This lovely beauty led to a brief silence of the mind. Whatever we define as happiness is this wonderful brief interval in which the mind somehow became silent. And that silence of the mind is defined as happiness. And that's why your Upanishad says that what we call as Anandam is beyond words and beyond even the reach of mind. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasa. Why? Because it is in the silence of the mind that this experience of immense happiness flowers. So obviously, the mind cannot try to explain that. And that's the beauty of Sarve Mano Nigraha Lakshananta. Whatever we are doing are small baby steps towards the grand goal of how do I spontaneously make the mind in its absolute silence. And generally we think when the mind is very active, that's when we are the most productive. Well, maybe we need the mind. It's an instrument. We need the intellect for a lot of other stuff. But for us to be truly happy, for us to be truly creative, those moments come from absolute silence of the mind. You take any stalwart in any field, be it sports or arts or research, they would have had their aha moments or eureka moments when the mind was spontaneously, suddenly became very silent and they got a new insight when it was least expected. And that's how significant silencing the mind is, or the silence of the mind is, whether we are in this a student life or a household life or a social life or in a totally dedicated spiritual life. It is pertinent to all walks of life. So, sarve mano nigraha lakshanantaha parohi yogo manasas samadhi. Whatever we do, it is all directed towards silencing the mind, whether it is secular work, whether it is social work or spiritual or religious or whatever. We are trying, we are struggling, we are gravitating towards that goal. And that goal is the goal of how do I make my mind silent. This silence of mind is of two types. One is a dynamic silence. This is a wonderful word coined by our Swamiji. That silence which you feel when you are in meditation or when you are absorbed in your work, which felt really good. Suppose you're doing what you really like and you're totally absorbed in it, you're engaged in it. It's called being in the zone in sports. That's when you are in that state of complete engagement with work, where the mind is just working when it's required, and default it is silent, dynamic silence. You see, that's the joyous state. That's the state we all aspire for. We sort of we stumble into that state. Okay. But we can increase the intervals of the state, we can make it more often, and that's why we need all this spiritual stuff. A clarity in form of philosophy, a practice to make sure that we are reduced in distraction, and the basic intent, the love, the prema. That's what is jnana, vairagya and bhakti. That love which flowers in our heart, right now it's a conditional love. I love reading this, but I don't love reading that, etc. That's a conditional if love. So when we are in the state of bhakti, that if is removed finally. So it becomes a default state. And the mind gets distracted here and there. That's what is vairagyam all about. Vairagyam means dispassion, which means not getting distracted from a purpose or a goal. And then of course jnana means understanding and having the knowledge of what I am doing in the first place. Not going through stuff blindly. In autopilot mode. They say 50% of our life is running in an autopilot mode. I'm not even talking about sleeping, I'm talking about waking mode. It has been told, it has been researched that about 50% of our waking time is in autopilot, which is good. For example, I don't have to each time remember where my bathroom is or where my door is or where my slippers are, where my shoe is, etc. So I need autopilot mode for all these repetitive tasks. But at times I make the same mistakes, I get into the same worrying mode, I get into the same anxiety mode, which also is because of autopilot, you see. And dynamic silence somehow is a miraculous state where autopilot is chosen for things where I don't need any intervention for all this external stuff. And for things which I do need my mental attention, it automatically rises, does the job of thinking, and then comes back to its silence. That's a state of dynamic silence. Mano nigraha means silence of the mind. The second one is static silence. That is the dulling, sloth, sleep. All that is also silence of the mind. When you are in deep sleep and you are not dreaming, obviously the mind is very silent, but that's a dark silence. Static silence, meditation, absorption into something I'm doing, relishing the kirtans I'm singing, or when I'm painting, or when I'm singing, or when I'm gardening, or when I'm reading something which I love. That state of that mind getting totally engaged and absorbed, all that is dynamic silence. You see, that's a joyous state, that's a most productive state and all that. So here, the final goal of all our efforts and endeavors are towards sarve mano nigraha lakshananta is to make the mind silent. Parohi yogo manasas samadhi. The greatest of all yoga, whatever you do, whether it is by serving others or whether it's by puja or whether it is by observing various fasts, pratam, etc. or by doing pranayama, or by doing regular work, whatever. It's all the highest. Parogi yoga, the greatest yoga is manasa samadhi. When the mind becomes calm and collected, and the mind is subjugated, right? That's the highest purpose of human existence. Whether spiritual or secular or, doesn't matter. That which leads us to that state is the state we all aspire. So here Bhagavatam, very beautifully in the Avantipura Brahmana Upakhyana, it's called Bhikshu Gita, is actually is telling here that the end of all these is finally to subjugate the mind. And he realized, so mind is the reason for my own emotions, for my own feelings. I will take responsibility for my feelings. And of course, my feelings are influenced by actions of others, behaviors of others. Instead of blaming, instead of pinning somebody else as the direct cause of my feeling, I realize that an unmet need is the cause of my feeling. That unmet need is not met by somebody else's action or absence of an action of somebody. So what I do is, what next? I go and request, I go and influence so that my need is met through somebody else or something else, so that I can get back to my feeling of happiness and joy, etc. So it is the mind which is the cause of joy, sorrow. The moment we miss it, the moment we go by the vagaries of the mind, by the oscillations of the mind, we end up being bitter. We end up blaming everybody, blaming life, blaming God, blaming countries, governments, etc. And once we start blaming, we are pushed into a passive state of inaction. And worry takes over, bitterness takes over, blame takes over. And that's not a very responsible way to live. So here Bhagavatam very beautifully says, live responsibly. Remember that it is your mind which is the prime cause of your positives and negatives. And the grandest purpose of what we do is to somehow silence the mind. All my efforts, all my struggles, all my endeavors, all are there for achievement. And what is that state of achievement? That's the state of contentment, joy, happiness, etc. What is that? Silence of mind. I studied so much for this exam. Finally, I passed the exam in flying colors or whatever. I'm happy. That mind which was restless at the point of me seeing the result suddenly has found its repose, its calm, and I feel happy. And I pin my cause of happiness to achievement. When the real happiness is the state where the mind is silent. And now there is a group of very young psychologists and scientists, behavioral scientists in America. They are called positive psychologists. I'm sure they're going to change the name because positive sounds very judgmental. And positive psychologists say, why do you wait for achievement to be happy? Why can't we turn the equation around as I am happy, hence I am at the best of my productivity, and hence I succeed. Instead of I work hard, I succeed, and hence I am happy. So instead of that, let's start with happiness. Let my happiness feed my efforts. Let me be engaged. Let me be hearting my work. And when my learning centers are all firing, that's when I'm happy, when I'm not anxious, when I'm not stressed. Obviously, success is a byproduct of that. So I am happier when I succeed. I use that happiness to be more productive, greater success, and nothing succeeds like success. So that's the new paradigm, and which makes perfect sense. And somebody from America put that very succinctly, very beautifully. They say, don't live for happiness. Why can't we live from happiness? See, that's what Bhagavatam or Upanishads, which is Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is the fruit of Upanishads. Says we all came from happiness, we live in happiness, and finally we become one with happiness. So don't wait for a result or achievement to define my happiness. Why can't I put my efforts from happiness? And hence I am at my productive best. I don't have to blame anything. I don't have to, feel sort of a lack, sense of a lack for everything. I put my efforts in abundance with gratitude. I succeed, and hence I am happy again. And I am ready for my next goal. I work. I put my efforts from happiness. I don't put my efforts for happiness. And that's what here is implied when they say सर्वे मनोनिग्रहलक्षणान्ताः परो हि योगो मनसः समाधिः. So that's not a state which only realized souls need to, or retired souls need to aspire for. You, me can aspire for this. When we actually shoot for the stars, doesn't matter. At least I'm not going to put my bullet on the ground, isn't it? At least it's going to hit a tree. So when we aspire for this lovely state of life, state of being, at least my productivity, my personality, my own wellness and happiness would enhance at least by 5%, 10%, if not 100%. That's still something wonderful, isn't it? That's the beauty, that's the practical approach our Bhagavan Sri Krishna takes. Expresses in his own form of sound, in form of Srimad Bhagavatam. I think we'll stop here and we can listen to people who are trying to come today. सर्वत्र गोविंद नाम संकीर्तनम गोविंदा गोविंदा. सद्गुरु महाराज की जय. प्रेमांबुदं यो मुरली निनादैः श्री कृष्ण रूपेण पुराववर्ष अध्यापि सोऽयं मुरलीधराख्यो पुष्णाति प्रेम्णा भुवनं सहर्षम्. श्री हरये नमः. श्री हरये नमः. श्री हरये नमः. सद्गुरु महाराज की जय.